Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife and sharing some fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. Hello and Happy New Year! You've got just me today. I thought I would do a special New Year's Day edition. By the time you get to listen to it, it probably won't be New Year's Day anymore, but it is being recorded on the first day of the Roaring 2020s. We're back to the Roaring 20s. How exciting is that? So it's not just a new year, is it? It's a whole new decade, which is actually, I find it really rather exciting, and I hope you do too. It's been a funny old last year, I have to say. There's been some good points, there's been some bad points. My life has been pretty good, but I fear a bit for the world. If you've listened to my podcast a lot, you'll probably know that I wasn't particularly happy with the result of the election at the end of this year. My Brexit credentials, I wear them pretty publicly. I'm not a big fan. I want to bring people together rather than putting up more barriers to collaboration. We'll see what this decade brings. It's going to be an interesting one. We will still be living in interesting times, and now that everything has shifted and is fixed, I have to adapt to that. So it'll be an interesting time for me to do that. Just before the holidays kicked off, I actually did a wonderful decade in review process, and it was really, really powerful. And so often, we lose sight of actually what we've achieved over a longer period of time. So this decade in review was essentially, this is it in a nutshell. There was lots more to it, but what am I proud of? What have I learnt? What do I want to let go of? And then the final bit was planning the next decade and actually dreaming really, really big, which is something that I'm always encouraging everyone to do, is to dream big, because you never know what might be possible. And in fact, what I love is that as part of this review process, it became clear, well, it was actually said by Marie Forleo, whose decade in review process it was that I was doing, that we often overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10. That's really telling, I think. So yes, dream big. Looking at the last year, because I won't take you back over the last decade, we'd be here forever, but what am I proud of in 2019? Well, there's three things that I wanted to talk about today. One is this podcast. I absolutely love it, and I love that you are listening to it and that you are taking time to just hang out with me as I witter on about all sorts of things. I've had the most wonderful feedback for the podcast, and I am so, so grateful. If you do like it, please leave me a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to it, because the more reviews I get, the more it pushes it up the rankings so that other people might see it randomly, people who haven't actually been referred to it, but that they might actually see it because, it's one of the podcasts recommended or something like that. And as you know, I want to get the message out that, we are magnificent in midlife and beyond. I always want to add that, and beyond, because I do believe we just keep getting better. So I'm very proud of the podcast. I'm just wrapping up season 3. Can't believe that. Done 3 seasons in a year. That's amazing. I worked out that I started this in March of last year, so I still have a little bit of time before we finish. I'm almost at 10,000 downloads of the podcast now on New Year's Day, which is just incredible. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being part of this journey with me. Please share it if you like it, and tell people about it. Something else that I'm very proud of, which I never would have thought I would achieve when I started out 2019, is that this year I have not bought any new clothing for myself. Now, I'm being a little bit lax with my definition of clothing because I did buy a little bit of new underwear and I bought some shoes. I bought some reduced shoes and full disclosure, I bought some full price running shoes because I realised that my old running shoes were 3 years old and you're only supposed to wear them for a lot less than that. So I was wondering, why I was getting aches and pains. And I thought, okay, Rachel, don't make the classic mistake of assuming that the aches and pains are age-related. It's probably because you've got running shoes that are 3 years old. And there has been a half marathon over that period. So, yeah, about time I had some new shoes. But apart from that, I haven't bought any new other clothing. So no coats, no jumpers, no shirts, no nothing. And when I started this at the beginning of last year, I thought it would be really difficult because I had a bit of a habit. I had quite a lot of habits, but my favourite procrastination technique is to go online and browse fashion outlets that I particularly like. And I've signed up to their mailing lists, so I get all their emails telling me when they've got new collections out. They're usually tantalisingly offered with a lovely discount. And I get loads of these. I mean, what possessed me to sign up to all these? I do not know, but I did. Usually in the spring, as it started to get warmer and spring was turning into summer, I would want to buy some new clothes that would see me through the summer season. They'd usually be sort of items that would work for early spring all the way through summer. And I'd do the same in the winter. As it was turning cold or autumn into winter, I'd want to buy at least one new jumper. How could I possibly go through winter without one new jumper? So I was a little bit nervous about how this would work. So the first thing I did was I unsubscribed myself from all these emails. And because I couldn't buy anything, and what I used to do was I used to buy things and then send them back. So I always ordered things online that had the free shipping and returns, which was environmentally not very sound, I now know. But I used to send a lot back because I didn't really, once I'd tried it on, I thought, nah, I don't like it. A few years ago, I had my colours analysed, and that was an absolutely life-changing process for me. I'm an autumn, so I have sort of auburnish hair and hazel eyes. So autumn colours are what work with me. And I also, not only do I know my sort of spectrum of colour tones, but I know which are my best colours. So often you'll see me in red, and red isn't just my brand colour, but fortuitously it is one of my very best colours too. So I like to wear a lot of red. So that has enabled me to create a wardrobe that I really like, to know that there are lots of things that can go together. So while I have a great wardrobe full of clothes, I still like to have new items in it to ring the changes. And I was worried about this, but I talked about it in my private group on Facebook called The Flock. And somebody very, very helpfully told me that you can go onto eBay and you can search on used clothes. So you can search that they're used, you can search for your favourite brands, you can search for your colour that you want, and you can search for your size. You can then look through everything that eBay finds for you. So I put in searches for red dresses, rust-coloured jumpers, blue tops, whatever it was. And I was soon experimenting on eBay and buying used clothing. And I stuck to brands that I thought had a reasonable level of quality so that if they were secondhand, they weren't going to be scruffy horrible. And it's worked amazingly. Yesterday, I actually wrote a blog post about my year of not buying anything new and how I am very late to the eBay party. I discovered I love the whole auction process and bidding and all of that. So if you want a new challenge this year, why not try it? Why did I do it initially? The main reason was because I saw Stacey Dooley's documentary about the impact of the fashion industry on the environment. And the fashion industry is one of the worst polluters I had no idea. I even thought, that cotton was a fairly environmentally friendly fabric. But it's not, because we in the West, we crave cheap, fast clothes, a lot of them made from cotton. Then this is an intensive industry to fulfill our desires. So Stacey visited this inland lake it was a sea really, it was an inland sea in Central Asia, and it had completely dried up. And it had dried up because all the water from it had been siphoned off to cotton factories downstream. And that was just so scary to see that. And of course, we all know that environmental standards are, pretty variable depending on where you go in the world. And the pollution, the effluent, the chemicals, oh my goodness me. So that was the initial trigger for deciding I didn't want to feed the monster anymore, the monster of consumerism. I just didn't want to do it. And the added bonuses have been saving a fair bit of money, and certainly saving an enormous amount of time. Because if I know I can't buy, I don't browse anymore, so I don't go shopping. I never did really like going high street shopping. I did most of it online. But I don't spend hours, looking at stuff online. And in fact, a few days ago, I found myself on Oxford Street in London, and I thought, I'll go to the flagship Marks and Spencer's. I've been trying to wean myself off Marks and Spencer's for years, but there's usually something in there that might catch my eye. You know what, this time? Absolutely nothing. I walked in the door at the back, walked through the store, and out the front. And it just did nothing for me. I was like, and I walked down Oxford Street, and there were all these shops there, shops that I previously would have quite liked. I just wasn't interested, which I found really, really enlightening, actually. That what I've learned is that I have enough clothes. I have sport clothes, I have climbing clothes, I have all climate clothes, I have wedding and funeral clothes, I have professional clothes, I have casual clothes. I don't need any more clothes. And it's New Year's Day today, and technically I could go and buy some clothes now because the year is done, but am I in a rush to do that? No. We'll see. I have got my eye on a fleece somewhere. I may go and treat myself to that, but do I need it? Nah. So that was the second thing from last year that I was really rather proud of. The third thing was how I spent my Christmas. And this year we didn't have any children at home. They were all off doing their own thing. And we didn't have any responsibilities either on Christmas Day. We didn't have to do the family thing. And I've always wanted to go and work for Crisis at Christmas with the homeless. So me and hubby decided that that was what we were going to do. So we signed up quite a while ago. We couldn't just do Christmas Day. I think they're very clever about this because a lot of people want to go and, feel good on Christmas Day doing this. But if you want to do that, you have to sign up for at least 2 shifts. So we ended up doing Christmas Day and then the following Sunday. And we went to Westminster College, which was the North London day centre that Crisis was running. And we turned up, our shift was from 3 o'clock till 10 o'clock on Christmas Day, and the same time on the following Sunday. And I cannot recommend this more highly. I mean, the operation was incredible, absolutely incredible. So highly organised. So many volunteers, although later they said they were down on volunteers because people, I guess, had come for their first shift and then perhaps not turned up for the other ones. But it was just incredible. On Christmas Day, I ended up doing the washing up in the kitchen, and that was industrial scale washing up, believe you me. Massive vats of food, that had got a bit burnt in the bread sauce or whatever it was. And a lot of scrubbing. So it was really hard work. And these pans were really big and heavy. But I was so pleased to be doing something. And then I ended up doing some more cleaning and tidying up. And I didn't actually get any interaction with our guests. Now, the homeless people who come to Crisis at Christmas are the guests and we are the volunteers. And I really sort of felt on Christmas Day that I hadn't because I'd been back of house, I wasn't front of house, so I didn't get to talk to anybody. And when we went to our induction meeting, we'd had a full briefing beforehand as to what we were going to be doing and how to behave. We'd been told that, a big part of what we were doing was just to interact with the guests, to give them time to talk, because usually nobody does talk to them and they have no one to talk to. So when Sunday came around, I was determined that I really wanted to be in a position where I could have a bit more guest interaction. My first job on the Sunday was in the hair salon. We didn't have very many guests on the Sunday because they'd obviously all had their hair done earlier. Apparently on the 23rd, when they first opened, they had over 60 people getting their hair cut. That must have been such a busy day. So I was volunteering for hair washing duty, but I wasn't needed, so I sat on reception and welcomed people coming in. And there was one gentleman who came in, and he looked a bit shy, a bit nervous as he walked in, and I said, "What would you like?" And he said, a beard trim. So he went in, and he got a hat on when he came in, so I didn't see his hair. But after a while he came out, and I think there were like 3 or 4 stylists ready and waiting, to do people's hair. And he came out, and he was a man transformed. He hadn't just had the beard trimmed, he'd had it taken off. He'd had a very snappy new haircut. He just looked so amazingly different. And I just said to him, "My goodness, you're looking sharp." And he smiled, grinned from ear to ear. And then he was looking at himself in the window of the door and admiring his face, because he could actually see his chin again, because there was no beard there. And then we had a little chat, and he told me about, where he came from and where he'd been. And he told me that the stylist had even given him a set of clippers so that he could continue to cut his own hair when he wasn't near having a free haircut. So that was an amazing experience. And then when I finished, when the hair salon closed at 5 o'clock, my next job was on luggage. And luggage was amazing, very illuminating, quite difficult at times. So people had come in during the week and had left their luggage. We'd given them a ticket with a number on, and we'd coordinated it with their wristband number for their registration. So some people had, left their entire worldly belongings. That's what it was, because these are homeless people. So what they'd left was probably everything they had. And of course, it was the last day on the Sunday. So at the end of the day, as the shift came to a close, it became really manic with everybody picking up their luggage. It was very sad to see these people picking up their belongings and heading out into the cold winter night. And some of them were sitting on the floor repacking everything before they left. And it was very salutary. It was very, wow, I am so blessed to have a nice warm home to go to. It's often, the difference between somebody who has a home and is homeless is perhaps, one really bad bout of ill health, or, one not too significant bad choice. There is such a fine line between us and them. We are them. We are the same. We are all human beings. So that was an interesting way to spend my Christmas. I really want to do it again. It was such fun, as well as, being just a really inspiring experience. I got to talk to a number of our guests, who some of them really just wanted to talk. They didn't want that much back from you, but they wanted somebody to talk to. And one of the things they told us, which I thought was really interesting, the people running the whole centre told us that for a couple of months after Christmas, there is a crisis effect. The homeless people on the street, there was probably about 30% were rough sleepers, which is pretty awful, really. But the crisis effect in the months after Christmas that the homeless people on the street have noticed is that people notice them more. they're not so invisible. And in fact, that's what we've been doing as we've gone around since we finished working with crisis. We are now talking to people on the street. We're saying hello, we're wishing them well. We've even gone and got them a warm drink if they'd like one. So this is a new way of me looking at the world, and something that I hope to continue. Again, notice homeless people if you see them on the street. Maybe even greet them, smile at them. Because generally we don't look down. We try and avoid seeing this. And it's there. So, anyway, enough of that. So what about moving forward into the new decade and 2020? Well, I've decided I want to be much more intentional about how I live my life. I've been moving that way for a number of years now, but I really want to be intentional now, because by the time I finish the next decade, I'm going to be 63. That does sound old, doesn't it? It sounds old to me. I'm sure it isn't old, and it won't be old when I am 63, but it feels a lot older than I am now. It is. There might be grandchildren around by then. Goodness me, can't quite get my head around that. But so I want to be really intentional about how I spend the next decade. So I'm trying to think about, having plans, goals, whatever they are, each year to try and work out, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? And maybe you do too. So have a think now at the beginning of this new decade and see where you might want to go to. We have a lot of resources on the magnificentmidlife.com website. Especially there's a really good workbook which is how to find your purpose and your passion. And the purpose can be purpose with a small p or purpose with a big P. It doesn't have to be purpose with a big P that you're going to save the world. It could just be, something really small that you do. Or maybe I actually started volunteering a few years ago. I just did 2 hours a week reading to primary school children. And it was children who were struggling with their reading, and they would have half an hour with me every week to help them out. So all sorts of things that you can do, but it does help feel more fulfilled. It certainly does. But, maybe you have a big dream and you want to work on it. So do come over and check out the website, check out all the resources we have on there, because what I want for all of us is that we are able to live the life that we want to live rather than necessarily settling with the one we've ended up with. All it remains for me to say is thank you so much for listening to this particular podcast. Thank you for listening to the others and for being with me on this magnificent midlife and beyond journey. I just get more and more excited about life the older I get and about the possibilities. And I'm raring to go and hoping that I still have enough time to do what I want to do. I'm sure I do. I want to be intentional. So, thank you very much, and all the very best for a magnificent new decade. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and maybe leave me a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. There's a wellness program, courses, midlife mentoring to help make the most of your next chapter, and our online members club. Because life's just too short for plain biscuits. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.